Welcome to Color Multimedia Enterprises. My name is Luke, also known as TNRE, and I am going to continue developing OpenFLedit. For those of you who are not aware, OpenFLedit is going to be a visual editor specifically designed for OpenFL. It is an editor that is going to include drag and drop, and the ability to modify properties and other such things and be able to generate JSON formatted text. We haven't got very far just yet. We've only been able to create a button that allows us to create a text field and place it into a canvas on the screen. In this particular video, what I'm going to be doing is including this bitmap icon so that we can start adding bitmaps, and also the ability to drag the text fields and objects on the screen. Now, before I go ahead and do that, there's probably a few things that I want to do to this canvas here. Now, if you realize we had this function here called add object, and you're probably wondering, well, there's no real point in using that. Well, that's not necessarily true, because access to the children is not possible in sprites or display object containers. We're going to have to do that kind of management ourselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a private var children, which I can't actually do like that, actually thinking about it. Okay, let's call it items instead, because obviously that name is reserved. And that's going to be an array of display objects, like that. I'm going to initialize it, otherwise we won't be able to use it. So that will be like that. And if we go down here, I am going to say items.push obj. So now, when we do the add object function, it will not only add it as a child to render, it will also actually add the item to an array, which is of course this one here. And the reason why we're doing it this way is because it allows us, it makes it easier for us to navigate this array versus trying to navigate an otherwise invisible array in the sprite. And then it will allow us to create JSON formatted text easier. Obviously we're not that far through the editor yet, but that's something to consider. Now, what I'm also going to do is say remove object, as you could probably tell. So we need to have that functionality as well. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to say items.slice. I am going to get the index of that object, and I am going to put 1 there, which means I want to remove this object. What you're basically saying by doing this is you're saying, okay, I want to remove a specific index in this array, and then I want to push it down 1 element. That's what that 1 is doing. And then I want to remove child. Right. So it's going to be like that. Okay. So now that we've got that bit done, what I now want to do is be able to obviously implement this bitmap icon. But first of all, before I go ahead and do that, I want to be able to drag all of the objects that we add to the canvas around on the screen. So first of all, I was originally thinking of creating a separate class and just extending from that with text fields as if it were a dummy class, right? So let me just explain to you what I mean by that. So let's just call it extended text box, not text field even, right? Which is going to be extended text field like this, right? And the idea is instead of adding text fields, we add extended text fields, and this extended text field will have a variety of functions that will allow us to drag the text field and other such things like that without actually interfering with its default functionality, right? If that makes any sense. Now, that's one way of doing it, but that does mean having to do it for every single bitmap or any display object for that matter, right? So I'm not going to be doing it that way. There's no point. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to go into my canvas and I want to be able to move an object. So I want to add a few event listeners to the stage to determine where my mouse is so that I can then start adding moving objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say stage dot, actually it can't be like that, lib dot, when I eventually import it as well, lib, there we go. It's going to be lib.current dot, or should it be, yes, it will be added to this one, never mind. I'm going to import mouse events. I am going to do mouse event dot mouse move, right? So every time the mouse moves within this canvas, I want to be able to update the location of the mouse. So I'm going to say mouse X, right? I think it's an int actually, and mouse Y, and initially those values I think are going to be 0. We need to initialize it because Nico will otherwise complain. And also JavaScript as well, even though we'll never use JavaScript. So now that we've got that, what we now want to do is we want to be able to set the mouse X and the mouse Y. So every time it moves, we're going to say e dot local X, I believe it is. And mouse Y is equal to e dot local Y. Pretty sure that's what it is. Mouse. I don't know why it doesn't do that. Why did I just do? Never mind. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's e.local. Yeah, I thought so. Okay. Flash develop can be a bit slow when you don't use this explicit typing. So now that we're capturing the mouse X and the mouse Y, every time we move it, we want to be able to also determine whether or not our mouse button is down, right? And the reason why is because when our mouse button is down, maybe we're actually moving an object on the screen. So, what would probably be better is we do a mouse down, which is going to be a boolean, and we're going to add another event listener, mouse down, and this is just simply going to determine whether or not our mouse is, actually I'll do that in a different event, because obviously we want to be able to determine whether we've clicked on a display object or not, right? But we're not going to do that just yet. So in the mouse down event, what we're going to do is we're just going to say mouse down is equal to true. That's all we're going to do. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say mouse event dot mouse click, or just click function and in here what I want to do is I want to know where that mouse clicked and whether or not each object within this canvas, which one I actually clicked on, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to iterate through this array. So as I mentioned earlier, the reason why we did the add object is because we wanted to manipulate things within our own sort of array of children, so that we don't have to do it with the so that we don't have to go through the awful navigation of the children otherwise within the sprites. But let's go ahead and implement this. So what I want to do is I want to know where the mouse location is, and I want to check to see if that mouse location is within a given display object, and if it doesn't, then we're not going to return anything. So I'm going to say for I in ... 0 ... and that is going to be the length of items, and then I want to get that item, so I want to say var, I'm going to take a reference to that item, so I'm going to say items I like that. And then what I want to do is I want to know where that location is and determine if the mouse location is within the bounds of this given item, right? So I'm going to say if item, or rather if mouse x is greater than item.x and mouse y is greater than item.y. And I also want to know if it's, of course, less than item.x plus width to get its bottom, right? So I'm going to say mouse x is less than or equal to item.x plus item.height, and mouse y is going to be less than or equal to item.y plus, that's supposed to be width, and then this one's item.height. So if those are the case, then what we want to do is we want to be able to get that display object. Now, if, for example, we decided that we wanted to create additional scenes and be a bit more object-oriented, which I will definitely be implementing a little later, and then be able to add those scenes into other scenes and other such things like that, then what we want to do is we want to be able to actually get the parent object of this item, right? So if we created an additional scene and we then put that scene into the current scene, so let's say I draw something, let me just give you a quick example of what I'm trying to tell you. So if I were to draw, let's say, so this is a bitmap here, this is another bitmap, right? Let's just change the color, and then this is another bitmap, right? So each of these are different bitmaps, and then I create an additional canvas scene here. So this is our current scene, and this is the scene that we want to add to this scene here. So I add that, but when I click on it with the current state of the code, i.e. if I were to just say, okay, because eventually we're going to have this functionality anyway, so I might as well just put it in anyway. So selected object is display object, right? I want to do selected object is equal to item. But with that functionality, what that's going to do is it's going to get whatever one of these items are in this scene. If I were to just click on this object here, I don't actually get that object. I get one of the child objects. So that's actually a problem. I don't want that functionality. I want to be able to get the parent object of what these objects are contained in, right? So the best way in which we can do that is by creating a separate function that gets its parent object, except if it is in fact this canvas. So we want to be able to do a recursive way of being able to get the parent object that isn't otherwise this canvas. So I'm going to create a private function, and this is going to be get root object, right? Because we're getting the root object within the canvas, if that makes sense. And I'm going to provide a display object here like that. And in this display object, what I want to do is if obj.parent, right, is not equal to this, or obj.parent is actually equal to something, right? So if it's not equal to null, so if it's not equal to this canvas here, and it does contain a parent, then we want to be able to return get root object, and then obj.parent, right? So now what we're doing is we're passing in the parent, and then we're checking to see if that parent has this parent, the parent of whether it's the canvas or if it actually contains one to begin with. Otherwise, we're going to return obj, right? Because if the parent is in fact equal to this, right, with this canvas, if its parent is equal to this canvas, then we know we've got the root object, so we're just going to return that object. So instead of doing selected object is equal to item, instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to say selected object is equal to get root object, and then I'm going to pass in that item. Right? Simple enough. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can now start moving them around. Now, first of all, before I decide to go ahead and do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a trace in here, and I'm going to say selected object dot name, let's say. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say txt.name is equal to my text field, just for the purposes of showing you that it does in fact work. So, and if it doesn't work, then we'll obviously fix it before we go ahead and complete it. That's something completely different. We don't want that. Okay. So let's do hexlib run OpenFL test project.xml. Float should be int. Where's that? Which line was it? 54 and 55. Oh, it's a float. Interesting. Well, I thought they were ints. Never mind. Okay. But then, oh, would that work? Let's say, oh wait, it's a float, obviously. For some reason I thought I changed it back to int again. My bad. Okay. So when we click on it, it does that, right? When we click in here, oh, interesting. Invalid field access parent. Called from line 61. Okay. ABJ.parent is not equal to this, or ABJ.parent is not null. Turn, get root object ABJ.parent. And it's going line 62, line 62. Wow, it's calling it it's calling it a lot. Oh. Okay. Maybe do that. We don't need to do that check, I don't think. Let's try it again. Because of the fact that that was passing, it just kept on considering. Yeah, that works. So yeah, that's getting the text field as we expected it to. So that's all good. Alright. Good thing I actually did that, otherwise I wouldn't have known. Okay. So we can remove this trace because we know that works now. So now, what I'm going to do is I want to be able to select that object. Once we've got that selected object, we can then move it around. So, if mouse is down, then we want to be able to move it. So, if selected object is not null and the mouse is down, right? We now want to move the object. Now we've stored the mouse X and the mouse Y, which is fine. But now what we want to do is we want to be able to store a logical point instead of the rendering point, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do private var logical mouse Y, X even, logical mouse X, private var logical mouse Y. And instead of, wait, why is it doing it here for? I don't want it in mouse move. Yeah, we want it in mouse down. The reason why is because when we do this click, it's going to do the mouse down first anyway. This is going to be dispatched first. It should do anyway. Let's just double check that to see if that is in fact true. So the mouse down will get the mouse X and the mouse Y. And when we release the button, the mouse X and the mouse Y will get the object and do everything we want it to do, but it's not actually doing it. But oh wait, I don't even know if it is or not. Let's get that trace back in. Let's just do an empty trace for the time being. I should really put it in side of here, actually, thinking about it. I'll do that again in a moment. No, it's already open. Hang on. Okay, try that again. Right, so click on it, click on here, yeah, it's doing it, okay, that's fine. So, the reason why we would want to do that is because we don't want, so we can get rid of this, we don't want the setting the mouse X and the mouse Y to interfere with our movement code when we move the object. The reason why is because if we were to set it each time, the mouse location will keep on setting and we won't be able to determine where to move our selected object to based on the new coordinates of the mouse, if that makes sense. So now what I want to do is Does mouse down get dispatched once or multiple times when the mouse is down? Guess we'll find out. Okay, so in here, what I'd like to do is I want to move this object based on where my new mouse location is. So I'm going to say var new mouse x is equal to e dot local x, and var new mouse y is equal to e dot local y. And now what I want to do is I want to be able to know, first of all, the relative point that our object that we selected was. So we want to get, so let's create two new variables here. So related object x, this is going to be a float. I'll show you why we need this in a minute. Related object y, float. So when we click on it, what we want to do is we want to get related object x is equal to selected object, and is there a way in which we can well, it's going to be x minus, or would it be plus? No, it's going to be mouse x minus selected object dot x, which is the related point between the x position for when we first click down and the x position of the selected object. And then related object y is equal to mouse y minus selected object dot y. And then we're going to use this with the new mouse x to move the selected object. So now what we're going to say is, in fact, I think this needs to be somewhere else once again. Actually, I think probably be better in here. So in here, what we want to do is we want to now say make sure that it isn't null first before we decide to do that. Okay. So now what I'd like to do is when we move it, we want to move the object. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a text field, a bitmap, sprite, whatever. So now what I want to do is, let's think. I'm not very good with maths, so I actually need to think properly. It's not good that I have terrible math skills. So we want to do selected object dot x. It's going to be equal to related object x minus new mouse x, I think. Although I can't be 100% sure. But let's just find out and see what happens. New mouse y. Okay. I have a feeling this isn't going to work as expected, but let's just try it and see what happens. Probably have the feeling I've got the maths a bit wrong. click on it. Oh, line 69. Related object X. Oh, hang on a minute. Related object X is equal to 0. Related object X is equal to 1. This is the reason why you shouldn't. This is the reason why you need to initialize variables, because otherwise it causes these things, these errors to come up. So 0 by default. Oh, interesting. Okay, so the operation isn't quite correct. Also, another thing is that I actually clicked on it instead of holding the mouse button down, so I actually need to make sure that that gets disabled. So I'm just going to say mouse down is equal to false. Alright. So maybe it's a plus instead. It's probably plus. That's to obviously drag the object. Oh. Okay. Disappeared somewhere. Yes, the object doesn't exactly move the way that we expect. If you could probably tell, the way in which it was essentially designed to work is we get the X location, the related object X and the related object Y, and we would determine what the difference is between the mouse location and the selected object. Maybe this is the wrong way round. I think that might be the case. But then I don't. Not 100% sure. I think that, no, that is right. I'm pretty sure it is. Pretty sure it is. I'm going to do a trace on it anyway, regardless. So, related object X, trace, related object Y. So I'm going to do a trace on it and determine what the Y location and the selected location is. So we click on it once, we select the object, and then we click on it again. Okay, 31 and 7. That doesn't sound right. No, that doesn't look right at all. No, that looks wrong. Should not be negative numbers. So that's the reason why it isn't working. Maybe it is the wrong way around. Maybe it is this way. Because the initial object is going to be at the location of 0 and 0. So it should be very close to the edge. No, that's now 14 and 11. again, that doesn't look right. Huh. Interesting. As you can tell, I'm not very good at maths. I really am not. I'm messing about at this point. I am literally clueless. I really don't know what I'm doing. I need to revise. It is as simple as that. I actually got this working, this exact scenario working in a version on Visual Studio, but obviously this is Hakes and OpenFL is completely different. That looks more like it. Right, so when we move, oh, well, almost. Okay, now we've got another problem. So every time we reset it, I do apologise for this inconvenience and how terrible I am at maths, and quite frankly I think I'll stop the video here as a consequence. So thank you very much for watching. I'll fix this in my own time because I don't want to bore you any longer. But yes, you've probably already turned off by now, and I don't blame you, but thank you very much for watching. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.